Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of CJI Unpacked. And this time we're going to talk about UPCAT and NPM Unpacked. And I'm very grateful to be joined by Rachel Lindsay, one of our inspectors here in Criminal Justice Inspection Northern Ireland, and Sam Gluckstein from NPM. So you're very welcome to today's podcast. So we're going to start off, Sam, with you. If you can tell us a bit about the background to UPCAT, what it is, and why was the NPM created in the United Kingdom?
Absolutely. And I think before we talk about UPCAT, we need to talk about CAT, which is the Convention Against Torture. And that sets up a prohibition from torture, an absolute prohibition. And UPCAT is the optional protocol on the Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment and punishment. Hopefully we shorten it to UPCAT because it's a bit of a mouthful. And really what UPCAT is designed to do is it recognizes that people deprived of their liberty are at an increased risk of ill treatment and torture. And it sets to open up these closed institutions to independent inspection and monitoring. So UPCAT sets up an NPM, a national preventive mechanism, whose job it is to go into all places of detention, visit, report on the findings with a preventive mandate. We're not investigative bodies. We're not bodies that go in reactively. We're proactive bodies that go in to look at treatment and conditions, and through those visits, prevent ill treatment and torture. I think more than that, it sets up an international network of bodies that work collectively on that single goal to prevent people that are deprived of their liberty from being subjected to ill treatment. There are 92 states in the world that have ratified UPCAT and set up NPMs. And in the UK context, we're made up of 21 independent statutory bodies, such as CJI and others, that mostly pre-existed the foundation of the NPM in 2009. But through the ratification of UPCAT, we've embedded better collaborative working and a preventive methodology to our approach and a human rights grounding. And I think that sets a network in the UK of over 3,500 people carrying out the NPM mandate, regular visits to all places of detention in the UK, reports to government to hold the government to account for the obligations that they've agreed to carry out.
So you mentioned, Sam, there's 21 NPM organisations in Northern Ireland, and we know that there are a number of different types of organisations. Can you say a little bit about, are there some organisations in the NPM that are more important than others?
Certainly not. They're all equal to our consideration, although CJI is a very important member of the NPM. But we're all equal within the National Preventive Mechanism. The point is that each of the bodies have different expertise, visit different settings, and come at it from a slightly different angle. So we have lay members, which is quite unique to the UK model. Committed people who are not paid and are from the community, from different professional backgrounds and volunteer backgrounds, public appointments, who go in and look at treatment and conditions regularly to prisons and police custody and other settings. And we have the professional inspectorates. And I guess we call that the breadth and depth model. So we have monitors who go in and carry out a breadth of monitoring over regular visits over a period of time. And then we have the inspections that will go in less frequently, but take a real deep dive into an establishment. And I think that really gives us a good look at a place, and we're able to monitor a place over a long period of time. And the ability in the UK model is unique internationally. We don't see 21 bodies across the United Kingdom, 21 bodies in an NPM that regularly, although there are multi-body NPMs across the world, but not quite as many as we have. But what that gives is that kind of shared expertise, shared learning, and it gives us an opportunity to sit back and look at what the systemic issues are and really hold the state to account for what we're picking up. And I think just one more thing I would say to that is I speak to colleagues internationally whose NPMs are small. They're often just some lawyers, maybe a doctor going into all places of detention. The UK NPM has such deep expertise in all the areas that we look at, and it's a real bonus of our model that we have people that are absolute experts in their settings, absolute experts who've been doing this for a long time, combined with people with fresh eyes coming in from different settings, that gives us a real level of assurance that our scrutiny model is a good one.
I suppose it is about the power of the collective.
Absolutely.
And that we work much better together.
Yes.
And learn from each other. I want to bring in Rachel here. Rachel, you chair the Northern Ireland subgroup of the NPM. Can you tell us a bit about that and what that means for you as chair?
Yeah, so since the inception of the NPM in the UK, there have been different subgroups looking at thematic topics like children in custody or mental health in custody. And a number of years ago, a subgroup was established in Scotland for all the members of the NPM who were based in Scotland and covered places of detention in Scotland. So the establishment of a Northern Ireland subgroup has been in discussion for quite a number of years, and I felt really strongly that it was an important thing for us as a devolved jurisdiction with a small group. There's just 4 NPM members, but all hoping to improve conditions for detainees in Northern Ireland. So we established the group last year with our 4 members, and we've had regular meetings since then and really coming together, sharing information, looking at what we can do to work better together, and you know, more of a focus with government and officials here about what's happening on the ground in Northern Ireland.
So can you tell us a bit about the membership and how that relationship works about raising awareness of what the NPM is and what it means for Northern Ireland?
Yeah, so within, as I mentioned, there's 4 bodies. CJI obviously is one of them, and we cover justice, places of detention and justice organisations. So the prison service, police custody, court custody, and the Juvenile Justice Centre for Children. We do those inspections alongside partners from the Regulation Quality Improvement Authority, RQAA, who have the remit to inspect healthcare more broadly, but particularly in places of custody. So those places of detention, as I've mentioned, but also healthcare, the healthcare settings, which are for people held in secure conditions, so learning disability, secure units, mental health facilities, and the Children's Secure Care Centre at Lakewood. The other 2 members, as Sam mentioned, are lay monitors, so the independent monitoring boards who visit the prisons regularly, all three of the establishments, and then the Northern Ireland Policing Board independent custody visitors, so volunteers who go in and visit police custody suites and undertake regular visits there. So the 4 organisations worked together prior to the establishment of the NPM and certainly before the establishment of the subgroup, but we see it as a way of having regular meetings, of collaborating, of understanding what the issues are and how we can support each other to work together to help create better outcomes for detainees.
How do you think we can raise awareness about what the NPM means and our obligations as part of the UK NPM and helping the government to fulfil its responsibilities under OPCAT? How do you think we could make more people aware of what the NPM is and what it does?
Well, this has been an issue, a topic on the agenda of the UK NPM for a number of years. And one of the things we have been looking at across the UK is the visibility of the NPM. So there is a logo for the NPM, and that appears on all the reports for all the UK members, but including in Northern Ireland. So on the front of CJI reports, RQAA reports, IMB and Policing Board, you will see the logo that highlights the fact that it's an inspection of a report on a place of detention, and therefore it fulfills our NPM mandate. We also, in the last couple of years, Sam's been has organised for everyone to have badges. So the badges are also the logo, and then monitors can wear those when they go into places of detention, so that for those detainees who are held or for staff in the establishments, people who are working under the auspices of the NPM are easily identifiable. All our kind of press communications will reference the NPM and the fact that this is part of our work, the forwards to our reports. We share the annual reports of the UK NPM, the one, for example, that's just been published recently. And then one of our objectives within the subgroup is to really highlight to government about how we have a Northern Ireland subgroup and what that means over and above the individual work of the members and the kind of senior management of those organisations. So one of the things that we will be doing in the next year is meeting with the kind of points of contact within the Department of Justice and the Department of Health to highlight about the priorities of the NPM in Northern Ireland, and particularly looking at kind of how we can work with them to raise awareness about the issues and ensure that the NPM here is on a sustainable footing.
Sam, Rachel mentioned there about the recently published NPM annual report. Can you talk a little bit about what the big messages are in that report?
Certainly, and I think the NPM annual report we see as a very good opportunity to look at the findings of the 21 members. You've all done inspection and monitoring visits over the last reporting year, and we take those findings and we look at the systemic issues that are going on. And so the report does cover a lot of content around issues in prisons, issues in police custody, issues in secure mental health facilities, and it goes into quite a lot of detail. But I guess the big message of the report is that we've been saying similar things for a long time. And when our chair wrote her foreword, she spent some time looking at the previous forewords of previous chairs of the NPMs, previous reports, and they read very similarly. And what we're saying is that while individual establishments, local establishments can make improvements to treatment conditions, and we think that the role that they play is very important, a lot of the big systemic issues that we've been talking about continue to be an issue over decades. It's the NPM's 15th year. I know it's CJI's 20th. And while there have been improvements, and absolutely the role of our organizations is important, some of those systemic issues continue to be made. And so we make the point that repeated recommendations have occurred time and time again. Government have accepted those recommendations, broadly speaking, and we haven't seen sufficient progress in a number of areas. And so the report really asks, it captures and comments on all of the sort of content of the last year of scrutiny in the UK and sets a sort of state of detention in the UK, if you like, as a collective report. But the comment is really a reflection point for all of us to say, where do we go next with this? And how do we make sure governments across the UK stay true to their obligations under the human rights law, international law, and domestic law to make sure treatment conditions of people held are at the highest possible attainable standard. And when we make a recommendation and you accept a recommendation, we need to see faster action.
And you mentioned there about the changes over the last number of years, 15 years, and obviously we're in a situation now in a post-pandemic world where actually the prison population in the UK has risen and is rising. And yet some of the issues that we're talking about that need to be fixed, so systemic issues, aren't dependent on the number of prisoners. So regardless of the number of prisoners, there needs to be sound policies and strategies in place around drugs and other substances in our prisons and around safeguarding and those sorts of things that, regardless of the prison population, need to be really effective. Would you have any views on that?
I'd agree, but I suppose what I would add is that overcrowding of the prison population affects every arm of a prison. And so, yes, these policies, these procedures need to be in place. Staffing needs to be at an acceptable level. Safeguarding, mental health regime, all of these things need to be up to standard. But overcrowding affects absolutely everything in a prison. And if it makes the staffing situation worse, it means you can't run a proper regime. It puts pressures on medical provision, all of these things. So absolutely, I would agree that regardless of the prison population, they need to be getting it right. I think our concern and the concern across the UK has been that the indicators have been that the prison population has been rising for some time. And we haven't seen in any part of the UK a real meaningful step to address that. And it seems to be always responding in crisis mode rather than a long-term strategy to either reduce the population or make sure capacity and staffing provision meets the levels that we have.
So with the National Preventive Mechanism, obviously the clue is in the name. It's focused on prevention. How do you see that panning out over the next 15 years of NPM?
How do I see the prevention of ill treatment panning out over the next?
Yeah, because I guess what I would see is that I'm very much focused on it's about giving assurance when things are going well, but it's also about supporting continuous improvement. So if the focus is on prevention, how do we make sure that other establishments learn from each other across jurisdictions, on learning, whether it's between health and justice? How do we collectively make sure that things improve over the next 15 years and those strategic issues that you were talking about are really gripped?
Absolutely. I mean, our focus is always outcomes for detainees. And so we want to see those improve. I think the NPM presents an opportunity for us to collaborate across the UK, across jurisdictions, and not just denounce where we see things going wrong, but share good practice. Where have we seen it go right? How can other establishments, other jurisdictions learn from each other? And I think the NPM presents a network to be able to facilitate that in a really meaningful way. I think more broadly, some of the work we're trying to do around mapping recommendations across the UK and codifying them so that we can look at systemic issues and look at, is there a jurisdiction that's having this issue, and making a meaningful way at tackling that challenge, and how can we encourage that? Because our job isn't just to sit high up and say where things are going wrong. Our job is to improve outcomes through whatever way we can, and that's really important. So how do I see the next 15 years panning out? I don't know. We will continue to focus on outcomes for people held in treatment and conditions, and do our best to hold government to account, but also support where we can.
So Rachel, NPM is celebrating being a teenager, and CJI is 20 years old this year. And interested in hearing your views, and rather than looking back, looking forward, where do you see CJI and particularly our role within the NPM? How do you see that developing in the years ahead?
Well, I hope that the collaboration that we have between the NPM bodies in Northern Ireland goes from strength to strength. So we've always had good links, but I think you can never have enough communication, enough intelligence sharing, and I would hope that we will be able to look more at, as Sam says, some of the systemic issues in Northern Ireland. So not just collaborate in relation to a particular inspection or a particular report, but actually try to look more at what data do we have, what information can we share between each other, both within the NPM bodies, but also with our other partners and stakeholders. So, for example, the ombuds, the offices of the ombudsman in relation to the police and the prisons, other complaints bodies, other human rights institutions, to look at what information is there that can help us prevent ill treatment against detainees.
So if I asked you to describe in one word how we were doing against our NPM and OPCAT obligations as CJI, what would you say?
I'd say good, but always room for improvement. It's not one word.
So NPM have an annual conference coming up in the spring, Sam. Any news on what we can expect from that?
Well, we've been trying to make it as successful as last year. As you know, you hosted us in Belfast last year, and we were really
hard act to follow.
Hard act to follow, but Cardiff are making a good stab at it. So we're going to be on our way we're going to Cardiff in April. And really what we try and do from those conferences is take the opportunity to discuss a matter of real importance to members, and use it not just as a chance to get together and share learning, although that's very important, but to also talk about an area of scrutiny that crosses across our different jurisdictions. So the theme is culture and monitoring culture at our next conference. So we're going to have some guest speakers. We're going to have some workshops to really think about the next direction of the NPM. We're also going to have a bit of a reunion because, as you say, we're a teenager at 15 years. So we've invited our former chairs to come and visit and speak and reflect on the last 15 years of the NPM and the next 15. So we want to hear about what were the big challenges of their time as in the chair and the successes, and kind of look at that and reflect on time gone by. And really, I guess part of what we're trying to do as well, because I can say, as I did at the top of our discussion very proudly, that we have around 3,500 people carrying out the NPM mandate. but we really want to get to those people. We really want to support them in carrying out their OPCAT mandate and help them do that in a human rights grounded way and use whatever resources as a team we can do to support that, ultimately to the goal of improving conditions for detainees. So on this occasion at the NPM, rather than just, we very much value our chief inspectors who join us and our chief executives, we've also asked for operational inspectors, monitors, people that are on the ground doing this work day in, day out to come along too. And we hope that's an opportunity to have a conversation between our chief inspectors and chief execs and our inspectors, monitors and visitors. So we're hoping to broaden the tent a little bit and do our best to get to the people that are carrying out the work and support them as best we can.
That's good to hear, because I think certainly in Northern Ireland we very much value the work that, whether it's police custody visitors or independent monitoring board volunteers in the prisons, they each have a very valuable voice and insight into what's happening in a particular prison or police custody suite at a particular time, and we very much value that as part of our work. So thank you all very much, or both of you, for contributing today. I hope everybody's interested in what we've had to say about NPM, and there's more information available on our website. Our next episode of CJI Unpacked is going to be looking at our forensic services report on what's happening in the development and delivery of forensic services in Northern Ireland.